Very warm welcome. This is now our 13th session, I believe, although sometimes I get it wrong. But I think it's our 13th session on Karma Chamé's union of Mahamudra and Mahasandhi. It's a very wonderful and profound text, and it's the Mahayana is full of wonders, but this is one of the wonders amongst the wonders. So seeing as it's part of Mahayana, and especially as we'll see today when we're looking at bodhicitta, this is part of our bodhicitta, or bodhicitta is part of this, whichever way you look at it. Then, sorry, I was thinking about some 7-point mind training, and in a conversation earlier this week with somebody, then part 2 of 7-point mind training is the actual practice, and that includes Mahamudra. So they said, well, is Mahamudra part of 7-point mind training then? Or is 7-point mind training part of Mahamudra? And both. It's both. You just can't separate them. So anyway, we're looking at the very apex of Mahamudra, Mahasandhi, and Vajrayana practice of visualization, mantra, as Chenrezik. And so this is very much part of Mahayana, as Mahayana is very much part of it. So let's start with our bodhisattva prayers, saying them from the heart rather than the mouth, trying to mean every word. And thinking in loving care for all our fellow sentient beings. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through our practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well. May they live long and be healthy. May they be well provided for and have good friends. May they find respect and live in places of peace, places of plenty. And most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be freed from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural and sacred well-being totally beyond suffering, and attain the great equanimity, free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamavati shameta shatru amkure mamkure marajite karota keorete jovati oloyane bishuda Nimale malapanaye kukure kaka grase grasana omuke paramuke amuke shame davane sawa graha bandhanane negrihitva sawa bhava pravadina vimukta marapasha savitva putamudra anugatita savamare Putsarita parishuddhe bigashantu savamara kamani. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads, on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. We're in Karma Chamé's text, and we're in this fourth of the 8 sections, 8 verses, 8 songs, as he calls them, and this is about the actual practice. I did say a few words about the Tibetan for this term, ngöji, and it's the actual practice. I think before I explained we find it in all over Vajrayana Buddhism, and it's as opposed to the preliminaries or the foundations, what you need to do first. So we have ngöndro, which is what comes before, preliminaries, foundations, ngöji, what is translated as the actual practice. The term itself in Tibetan has more weight than that. It's not a technical label. It's got more, in English they say the real deal. You say this is the real deal, the real thing. And it's a powerful term. It's a powerful term. I can't convey it any better than that. This is the real deal. And I mean, it means this is what you have to do. It's not about studying, it's not about thinking about something. It's what you have to do, how you have to be. It's not for the future. And in Vajrayana, let's not get lost there. We've done it many times, but the difference between Vajrayana and Mahayana, Vajrayana's a special aspect of Mahayana. In Mahayana, we have the idea of a path that leads to enlightenment in the future, however long it takes, however many lifetimes it takes. In Vajrayana, we never forget, and all of our practice is to remind us it's here right now. So it's a question of how do we have to be right now? What do we have to do? And it's not in this text, it's not in the explanation, but I think it's very useful for us to contemplate the difference between, I suppose, what's called in English religion and spirituality. Religions are organized. They are what they are. Can't say they're good, can't say they're bad. They all came from great teachers, or their founders, and then something developed. It developed over centuries, over thousands of years, and in our case, in Dharma, it became a lot of organized stuff. Buildings, temples, monasteries, retreats, religious systems with hierarchies, and so on and so on. It's a religion. It's a religion like the others. And the life of Buddha wasn't like that. Buddha never built one temple. Buddha didn't set up one study center. In fact, he couldn't have done, because what we study, he gave, it's like a drip feed over 45 years. He didn't say from day one, intensely teaching day after day after day after day for 1 year or 3 years and said, that's it, Now we spend the rest of our time together studying that, practicing that. It was so beautifully organic. It's wonderful to read what we have of the life of the Buddha, because you see, he just meets people, or people meet him, and he just was. He was. And that wasness was so big and so immediate and so undeniable. Anyone who saw him, nearly everyone, they wanted, how can a human being be like this? What have you got that makes this presence is tangible, is transformative to be near, so obvious? And so he gave them instructions. According to each person, sometimes one simple thing was all they needed. They changed and they followed him. And so slowly over 45 years, and to all different sorts of people, he gave what we now have as his teaching. He was homeless. He stayed in places, but he never had his own place. He was invited here, invited there. And his people were homeless. And then they built shelters for the rainy season. That's a difficult time. And they asked permission. They were supposed to be homeless. And they said, but in the summer when it rains, can we build shelters? And he said, yes. And then that gradually became temples and monasteries. And then once there was 100, 200 years later, people started writing down his teachings. Then they became libraries. So we have Buddhism as a religion with so much stuff. And it's got the good and the bad, and the good can be very, very good. But then there's spirituality. And spirituality is, I think it's a term that conjures up much more, I hope, the idea of being. So when we get this term mushi, the actual practice, this is what has to happen. And if it doesn't happen, then the result doesn't come. If we want this wonderful path where Chenrezik embodies Mahamudra, embodies Dzogchen, then we have to be in a certain way. And a certain part, what we're studying in this fourth song, is about, remember at the beginning it says this is in two parts, what we need to know, and then what we need to do for the actual practice of Chenrezik as Mahamudra. So the practice instructions, what we visualize, will come in the second part. What's assumed in this first part, and I think it's true for most of us, is that we've received teachings on, we saw last week, refuge. Got the facts. Now you have to really take refuge. If your mind is not in a state of refuge as a basis, like the foundation of a building, the rest won't work. It's as simple as that. So I tried last week my best to bring out the reality of that, and being in a state of refuge, it's the beginning of this spiritual journey of identity. Who are you? what do you really want to be? What do you identify with? So I give you an example in samsara, in ordinary life, when somebody is a real family person, mother, father, and your family is your everything. And of course there's the rest of life. You've got a job, you have to work, and job's important, and you're in society, you vote for somebody, all of that's there. And but your own family it's you. Does that make sense? It's where your heart is. It's what you feel you are. You are like an octopus or something. You're not just you and this precious human body. If your son or your daughter is unwell, you're very, very moved about it. You're worried. You want to get them well. It's like part of you is unwell. Part of your family. And then if you have a partner, your partner dies. It's like part of you is gone. Not there. This, who you are, what you identify with. I suppose we could take other examples, like if you don't care for your family and you're a corporate businessman, and the company is everything, then you identify with the company and its success or whatever. I don't know if such people exist, but the point is it's where your heart is. It's what you identify with, what's important for you. So this is refuge, what becomes important for us, and very, very present for us is are the refuges that we went through last time. The 3 basic refuges, the 3 special refuges of Vajrayana, and the Guru that embodies them all. Now, you may say, or you may feel and think, I don't have a Guru. You do. You just haven't met him or her yet. That connection's already there. It comes through all of your past lives. And in this life, and what we're doing now, and for many of you, it's a connection with the Kamakaja lineage. And even if you haven't met your Guru yet, you're doing what you need to do for that to happen. It can happen that you meet a human being. It could happen on a much more, how can you say, sacred, spiritual, inner level. Can happen in lots of ways. But please don't think you don't have a Guru. I remember when I met my Guru, who was Akon Rinpoche, the year before. Yeah, I think it was the year before. I felt, how can you say, a presence I hadn't met yet that was getting closer. It was really exciting, It's like, where the hell are you? Where do I have to go? Where, on this planet, what do I have to do? And it's already kind of there, but not materialized into a person. And then when I met Akon Rinpoche, it was very strange, because like a lot of Tibetans, he looked younger than he was. So when I first saw him, I thought he was and he was probably doing something like cleaning the dustbins or sweeping Sameling. I thought he was a Tibetan boy helping out at the center. So it wasn't like, Guru, and then go running up and prostrate on the ground. I sort of asking people, where's Akon Rinpoche? And then when they set up an interview, I go in the office, and that was him. And so, because I'd had this feeling, and because I was still quite confused, I was asking him, because I thought he's a Tibetan Lama, he can help me for my guru. I said, can you tell me where he is? Do I need to go back to India? Who is he? Can you help me? And he was smiling, and so I spent my first year arguing with him. I was hippie. He was far too serious. And it was so frustrating because every time he was right. It's one of those things where things happen in life all of a sudden to prove him right, and I was wrong. And then I resented his influence over Katya. I thought, I'm her boyfriend, I'm the man. So it's that masculine thing. We spent time arguing. And I saw the other day, excuse me, I'm rambling on today, but I hope it's helpful. There was on internet pictures of a very old Lama in his 90s from Canada, Lama Karma Tinley, very important lineage Lama, still alive, and he'd gone all the way to Nepal to get a blessing from Tai Situpa, who was giving teachings there. And I met him in 72. He was in Samaling for a while. And he had poor eyesight and these lenses that make the eyes look about twice as big as they are. And I remember him saying, when he saw me, because he spoke English, "Oh, you're very bad, man. You argue with Akon Rinpoche." And then he said, "And you're full of lust." And there were two old Tibetan dogs there at the time, Pema and Sintu. And she was on heat, and the male was following her with his nose to her bottom, like this. And they happened to go by just at the time. He said, "You're just like that." He said, full of desire, full of anger, arguing with Akon Rinpoche. Then he walked off. So true, so painfully true. So it took me the best part of 2 years to realize that Akon Rinpoche was the guru I'd been looking for. It wasn't sort of immediate slam bang, but I just wanted to let you know about that magic time when it was getting closer, and then it actually happened. And that when it happens, it can happen in all sorts of ways. For some people, it's immediate, it's fireworks, it's amazing. For some people, it's a tough journey of facing yourself, like my one was. But it will happen. Don't think you don't have a guru. That being, that presence, that bodhisattva, that liberated mind, that channel to the Buddha nature that's the truth of yourself, the good person that you really are, is already on your case. Now you've got to get on your case. That's what this chapter is about, so that you can feel it. So let's look at the verses. We finished on the verse about the need for our mind to have taken refuge. The Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the Dakas, the Dakinis, the protectors, they need to become real for you. They are your family. They are the family that will never die, will never let you down. They are your true family. That's where you belong, because they are nothing but goodness. So we need to feel that connection. Talk with them. Feel them, let them in. Take refuge in them. Let them be everywhere with you, every day, everywhere you go. Know what they are. And then if you've taken refuge as a ceremony, remind yourself of the 9 commitments that there are when you take refuge. Just one of them, for instance, it says, if you've taken refuge in the Dharma, the very nature of Dharma is ahimsa, non-harm. From the moment you take refuge onwards, you do everything you can never to harm anybody, with body, with speech, or with mind. That's a commitment, a samaya, the samaya of refuge, one of the 9. So we really have to, now is the real deal, we have to do it. Whatever it costs, however difficult it is, we never say anything that hurts anybody. We never make bad speech. With our body, we are so careful never to harm any living being. The real refuge has to happen within us because we identify with the total goodness. Now, one thing, and this is very important these days because, well, what can you say? We're modern Western people. We're mixed up, right? Life's too complicated. Society's mixed up, it's a mess. And the people are a mess. What I mean is, we don't live in a remote village where nothing has changed and where your life has been the same all the way through, and everything is so simple. And your life's planned. You get married, you have kids grow up, that. Modern life is crazy. It's 1,000 times more complicated than it needs to be. So many people have, I think, what modern language will call low self-esteem. That's no good. It will just destroy you. You are Buddha. How are you ever going to connect with the Buddha that you are if you think you're rubbish? If you think, I can't do this. If you think, I'm just an ordinary human being. So, we're going home. We're becoming who we really are. We're becoming the goodness. So we walk through this world every moment in kindness and in care for other beings, because we know where we belong, who we truly are. So if you have feelings of low self-esteem, because of your karma, sometimes we get a bad hand of karma. And our life is not successful in human terms. A lot of people like this, and we don't have a good opinion of ourselves. We just need to know that's our karma. That's the surface, is what we have to put up with. It's not who you are. You are a Buddhist. You have taken refuge in what you really are. You are a bodhisattva. You are going to be more and more wonderful, a friend of the world. And we really need to believe that. So the next verse is about the bodhicitta. Page 25. I don't have verse numbers, but anyway. Because every sentient being has formerly been your kind parents, it's not enough to become enlightened for solely personal benefit. The seed of enlightenment is a vast heart wish to bring each and every one of them, sentient beings, to Buddhahood. That's a very simple verse. Rani sonje tope michote semchen tamche pama drinchenyin deda tamche sonje sar kopi semje jachen sonje sabun yin. So there's a couple of things to know that I have to explain here to make this verse very clear. And then there's the real meaning in terms of mushi, actual practice, what you really need to do, which is to be a bodhisattva. So, first of all, it says, because every sentient being has formerly been your kind parent. Now, this is hard for some people to believe. You see an ant running across the ground and you think, in the past that was my mum or my dad. Really? And then you see how many trillions, zillions of insects there are. How could there ever have been so many lives? And I only see a few people, but put your hand up if you really believe it. Okay. Yeah. I mean, we're reasonable, logical people, and it's just so hard to believe. But we've had that many past lives, and then some people are so nasty, so vicious, and so on. So how can we look at this? The cop-out way to look at this, right, to make it doable for you, is that if you think like that, whether it's true or not, then thinking like that is going to make my bodhicitta work. Okay? Thinking like that is going to make my heart open, my mind open, my mind able to receive the blessings, able to connect with what it really is. This is the way. This is the way all the past bodhisattvas have gone. They've seen every sentient being they meet as mummy from a past life, or daddy, with the assumption that the parent relationship in those past lives was a nice one. A lot of people don't have that. They have trouble these days with their parents. That also is partly a cultural thing. I remember the early years of Tibetan lamas coming to the West and people saying, but I don't love my mother. She's horrible. And they look and they say, but how can you? How can anyone not love their... They couldn't understand it. They couldn't get it in. And they think maybe this person's a crazy person. And then when the more people they met, the more they saw. But in our modern lives here, unlike in Tibet, or unlike for Tibetan Buddhists, people didn't get on with their parents, hate their parents, or their parents were really unkind to them. And then anyway, it's not the topic. It's not the topic for today. There are lots of teachings, and they're very, very important teachings to change you about how to think of our parents, and in particular of the 2 or 3 years before we remember anything. This is strange. During that time, their kindness to us cannot be repaid. Everything they gave us, but we don't remember the way our brains and memory develops. Some people have one or two memories. What's the earliest? Do you remember? Put a hand up. 3 years, when you were 3 years old, can you remember? 2 years old? 1 year old? Learning to walk? No. So, it's lengthy and it needs to be done. We need to really think, because we can't remember it, so we need to tell ourselves it happened. That we were carried for 9.5 months, and everything that meant for the mother, the difficulties the mother went through, how she fed us from our own body, and so on. I think you've seen these teachings. I won't go through them all now, but we really need to think about that and how we would be if it didn't happen. You wouldn't know how to, afterwards, once you've been fed and cared for and your nappies have been changed and all the rest of it, then you learn how to feed yourself. You learn how to walk. How would we be if we couldn't walk? How would we be if we couldn't put clothes on, know how to dress ourselves? How would we be if we hadn't learned to speak? These basic things of life were all gifts from our kind parents. That's why they're called kind. We don't remember. We don't remember. And so, anyway, the solution for the person who cannot believe it's true that every sentient being has been our parent in a past life. The opt-out thing is to know that if we see it like this, if we tell ourselves it's like this, and if we look on each person like that and think, in past lives they were so kind to us, they were like our best friend, the kindest person ever to us, and if they are suffering now, then how can I just neglect them? How can I abandon them? They gave me so much in the past. They gave me my everything in that past life, enabled me to live, gave me life itself, gave me the basic tools of life. Now they're suffering. I must pay it back. By thinking like that, people became Buddhas. Simple as that. If you think like that, it will work. It will change your attitude toward each person you meet. Look at your attitude towards each person you meet. Are you judgmental? Nod for yes, or shake your head for no. Huh? You've got a different opinion of everyone. You look up to some, maybe not so many. You look down on a lot, right? It's how we are. We're arrogant. And that arrogance is a prison. It's a darkness. It's horrible. To get rid of it, we look on everyone with kindness and with the same total kindness. Like I owe you everything. In Shantideva's teachings, he says, how do we look on other beings? We look on them with nothing but kindness, because it's through them you'll become enlightened. It's through them you'll become enlightened. It's so deep that it is so true. It is so true. So we look on, this is the first line, because every sentient being has formerly been your kind parent. Now, we're in illusion just now. It's a very deep illusion, very strong. When we get out of that illusion through meditation, and you get a much faster vision, special qualities of insight, you will see how true this is, how deeply and meaningfully you are connected with every sentient being. That's the truth of it. Buddha saw it. Buddha tells us about it. Bodhisattvas tell us about it. But we're in this prison of arrogance and ignorance, and we just don't see it. So that will come. Then he says, it is not enough to become enlightened for solely personal benefit. A lot of people ask about this line, or however the meaning of this line occurs in other texts. It's like, what? Can you become enlightened just for yourself? Is there a choice, like, red pill or blue pill? Which one you're going to take? You can get enlightened just for yourself, or you can get enlightened just for everybody. Can that be? And so the answer is contained in the teachings on the two sorts of meaning of this word, enlightenment. Buddha. Buddha means two things. The word means freed. The one meaning of the Sanskrit root Bud means freed. It means freed from the darkness of ignorance. That's shorthand for freed from the darkness of ignorance and its consequences as rebirth in samsara. So, freed from samsara. The other meaning of the word Bud is having qualities of wisdom. It means fully flourished, having qualities of wisdom. So this term Bud is applied to two very different results of two different paths within the Buddha's teaching. Two different paths suited to two different types of potential inside us. I mean, look here, we're how many people? I've not got my glasses on. It looks like 29 if I squint. 29 people. No two of you are the same. Do you think you have an identical mind twin amongst our group here? Did you ever meet anybody? Maybe somebody who looked a bit like you. I used to get mistaken for a famous person in Paris. People asked for my autograph. It was quite funny. You'd be in a lift and people would look at you sort of. And then they say, are you? And at first I said no. And then afterwards, I thought it's going to make them so happy. So I say, you want an autograph? And they say, yeah, you write something. So I looked like a famous actor. And sorry, today I'm rambling, I can't help it. The early years of Sameling, the way I looked physically, my face, reminded some people of Peter Sellers. So people would say, you know who you look like? I was thinking, wait for it. And I say, no, who? Peter Sellers. I say, really? They say, yeah, you look a bit like him. So one day in the old Sameling, before that everything was built, I was in the kitchen doing the washing up after lunch, standing at the sink. And we had this American lady who was staying there. She was rather loud. So she came in the door and she said, hey, you know who you look like? So I was waiting for it. Peter Sellers. I turned around, gave her a smile. And I said, no, who? you look like Dracula. Because I used to wear a cloak at the time in the winter. It's a very good shepherd's cloak. He said, when you wear that cloak, you look just like Dracula. So anyway, sometimes we might meet somebody in life who, another funny story related to that woman. We had a young Western reincarnate Lama in Samaning at the time, and it was kind of not very publicly known. He was a very naughty little boy, amazingly perceptive. I mean, he could be a naughty little boy and switch, and then you had an old man in the little boy's body who could blow your mind with what he told you. So he was young. He was not very good with kids' ages, but 5, 6 kind of young, 5, 6 years old. And so this person, this lady, wanted to get close to him, and she said to him, I'm going into town. Can I get you something? Is there some kind of toy you'd like, or I can buy for you? You just tell me, I'll get it for you. And he said, he looked up at her. He said, no, I need nothing. Thank you very much, very kind. She said, no, come on, there must be something. And she really pushed him. And then he looked at her, and he was so strong and powerful. And he said, look, if you really need to buy something, whatever gives you pleasure and that will make your mind happy. I need nothing. And then he sort of turned back into kid mode and ran off to play in the garden. It was incredible. Anyway, let's get back to business. It's away from the stories. So there's 2 types, and let's not use the word enlightenment, although they are enlightenments because they are lasting freedoms. They last forever, no reversal. So freedom and wisdom. There is the nirvana of the Shravakas, where they become arhats. They are free forever from all the sufferings of samsara. It will never come back. They've destroyed the results of karma and the causes of karma. Causes and results, all finished. They are arhats. And they have so much insight into the nature of existence and the psychology of existence. They know about the mind and how it works very, very thoroughly. And some of the arhats have many special supernatural gifts of insight because they've studied karma very well. So they are enlightened. The burden of samsara has been removed. They are free forever. And then, but they are not Buddhas. They are not Buddhas. And they don't have the skills to help others except by example. So they cannot help like the bodhisattvas help. Hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of beings, or like Buddha, mind, which is helping everybody all the time. But they are free from samsara. They are out. That's amazing. It's incredible. It's sort of nirvana with a little n. That's possible. And for some people, the bodhisattva path is impossible. They don't have the strength just now. They don't have what it takes to set off on that path. They would fail, and then they'd feel miserable, and it would set a bad karmic seed for the future. It's better not to set somebody on a path where they'll fail. What's the point? If they don't have what it takes, just take a physical example. You send somebody on a trek. They're not strong enough. They're not prepared enough. they're going to end up halfway along the trek in tears, feeling disappointed, feeling they've let everybody down. Somebody has to help them get back to base or whatever. What's the point? If from the start you can see they know where they're going to do that, there's no point doing that. Better to make them stronger, so that, or take them on a trek that they can manage. And yes, it's common sense. Physically, that's easy. You can see somebody's body and their health. Mentally, psychologically, karmically, how the hell to know what karma somebody's got? What they did in past lives, the baggage they carry, and then just now, and the good baggage they carry as well. The surprising things that can come out. I saw Akon Rinpoche was such a wonderful bodhisattva. He knew how to bring out qualities in people that they didn't seem to have. I saw him give delicate jobs to clumsy people, statue making, and I thought, God, no, don't give Rinpoche, don't give that person the job, because it's, through the statue making, through Rinpoche's help, that person lost the clumsiness, got the finesse of an artist. Nobody would have expected it, but he knew, and that in making the Buddha statues and so on, that person would be getting rid of so much karma. So, dealing with the mind, what is the point of setting somebody on a journey of practice that they can't manage? There's no point. So the Buddha, in his total wisdom, with his followers, he gave all of them the basics of Buddhism that we have as the Shravaka path, the Theravada path, and so on. And then to those who were ready, he gave the Mahayana path. And to those who were ready, he gave the Vajrayana path. So wise. So there is this, how can you say, option of freeing just one's own mind. It's wonderful. It's a very noble thing to do, and anybody doing that is wonderful. But more than that, if we can, if we have the juice, if we've got the karma, if we've got the circumstances, if we've got the support, everything it takes to follow the Mahayana path, then we should. Then we should. Because it's the way to become like Buddha. With all the qualities that we see in the Bodhisattva path, the 10 levels, everything they do, everything they acquire as qualities, and then eventually they become Buddhas. So we need to know about the difference between the Shravaka path and the Mahayana path to understand this line. It's not enough to become enlightened just for yourself. The seed of, so the second meaning of enlightenment in this line, the seed of enlightenment, meaning the Buddha's enlightenment or nirvana with a big N, it's called non-abiding nirvana, is a vast heart wish to bring each and every one of them to Buddhahood. It's where every sentient being that we look at and meet, we think of this person, this being, this insect, this bird, whatever we meet. If you've got that kind of mind, you meet spirits, you meet ghosts and so on. Them too. It's been so kind to me in the past. Your heart opens to them in gratitude. And then you want to think, what can I do to help this being. And if I can't do anything now, I hope in future lives to reconnect, to be able to repay everything that all other beings have done for me to get me here. We're in a wonderful place. We're in a wonderful place. This precious human existence, every hour, every day, is such a gift. Believe me, it is such a gift. Really. So that's the way we look on other beings. And then we want to pay them back. So that's why we take the bodhisattva vow. We take the vow to reach enlightenment so we can help everybody. And that is described as a vast heart wish. Now, here's the trick. We've been in samsara a long time, right? I have anyway. I don't know about you. We know how to long for things, right? We know how to long for whatever, relationships. We know how to long for, whatever turns you on, basically. And it could be traveling, going places. Some people it's food. It doesn't matter. We know how to do that. Let's do a little experiment. Something, you know what you long for, or in the past, maybe you've gone beyond it already, but whatever it is that, you really wanted, maybe you didn't get it, but you really, really wanted. Remember that longing. Try to stir it up now. Get it going. Like if it was a person, think how much you wanted them, how much it meant to you. Live or die for. What do people say? There's something to die for. It felt like that. Try and feel it, that longing. Or maybe you've forgotten how to long. Does it feel like that? We used to be good at longing. It could really be. So now, whatever you felt, can you imagine a bigger and bigger longing? We know how to do it. We've got the juice, the mechanism, we can do it. This says a vast heart longing. To bring everyone to enlightenment. I think that's why I'm alive. I've got these teachings. Oh, we will get them when we get through the text. We've got these teachings, we've got other teachings. And it's going to help me to bring all these other beings to enlightenment. I'm really going to do it. We need that confidence, utter confidence. There's a vast heart longing. If only I could. Oh, how wonderful, like to help 100 people, first bodhisattva level. 1,000 people, second bodhisattva. You're really helping 1,000 people. I got a very, very short message this morning from Taisitupa. And he's helping millions of people. Millions of people. That's real. He's alive. He's doing it. It's not just in text. We can become like that. Vast heart longing. So now in this verse, what we're looking at, in the last verse, what we need to really do now, and from now on, the reality of the basis for the practice, really take refuge. And now really be the bodhisattva. Walk through your day with those eyes, the way you look at everyone, past parents, future Buddhas, because I'm going to help them become Buddhas. And then that drives our practice. How will I do that? By mastering my mind. Whatever life throws at me, through karma, it doesn't matter, I'll master my mind. That's how I'll help everybody. That's basically bodhicitta, but there are so many teachings on bodhicitta, and we've been through many of them in the past years. Now the next verse is long. Buddhas and sentient beings are of equal importance for one's own attainment of total enlightenment, because there is no other way to perfect Buddhahood than by practicing the 6 transcendent actions. The poor and destitute beings are the focus for the practice of generosity. Suffering sentient beings are the focus for developing compassion. All your enemies and those who make your life difficult, rewarding your help by making more trouble, become aids to enlightenment, since they're the basis for developing forbearance. Knowing this, give rise to the strength of mind, which comes from the excellent thought that even if you had to do it all on your own, you would establish all beings without any bias or partiality in the state of Buddhahood. This is the profound teaching called generating bodhicitta. Rani sopi sonje drupala sonje semchen nipo kadrinyam paro chindro namsu malang para zopi sonje topi tapmepe jimpa tangyo semchen ulpongchen ninje gomyo semchen dungachen penlo nurjel dragek tamcheni zerpa gompe tende chanchub drop detarshipi chokda rimepe drokundani kone sonje sar kepe samzang loto jepani janchub semje jepe zabchuyen. So this follows on from the previous verse. In the previous verse, we saw that what we need to do, what we need to be, what we need to become, what needs to be there is refuge, and then bodhicitta. Now bodhicitta itself is in 2 parts. There's aspiration bodhicitta and there is practice bodhicitta. The aspiration was voiced in the previous verse. It's the longing, the vast, so vast you can't imagine, longing to bring every sentient being to enlightenment. If only I could. Through practicing Dharma. So the first bodhisattva vow is a commitment, vows a commitment to that state of mind where we want to keep that mind alive. We need to not lose it. We need to keep it alive. We need to make it better and better. And we need to keep it pure. And we need to be able to repair it when we mess up. Right? So when we don't make it. When we look, it's not the topic here, but when we look at the bodhisattva teachings, that's how we see, what do we do never to lose it? What do we do to make it stronger, fix it, and so on? We look at those areas. So, very briefly, we won't go into them. It means we need to diminish the 4 dark thoughts and increase the 4 white thoughts. So you need to look into the teachings on those. Never to reject even a single sentient being from our kind bodhisattva wishes. Not sort of, I want to bring everyone to enlightenment except him, or her. Everyone. To exclude anyone means we lose our commitment, and so on. We need to look into that. So that was the aspiration. It's about the basic, aspiration, wish, what you aspire to, what you long to do. Now this verse is looking at the second aspect of bodhicitta, which is practice, and which has its own vow. And it's the practice is often summed up as the 6 paramitas. So we get an indication, especially about the first 4 paramitas in this verse. Sometimes when we look at these 2 aspects of bodhicitta, the aspiration bodhicitta, the wish, the state of mind, is seen as the novice vow for bodhicitta. And then practice bodhicitta vow, when you take it, is the actual thing, is the full deal. When we take the practice, the aspiration bodhicitta, it's only to do with our state of mind, right? How much you are a bodhisattva or not, where your aspiration is. It's just you, it's your mind. So that means if we break it, if we get it wrong, we fix it, it's all internal. It doesn't affect anybody else directly. When we take the practice commitment, that's about actually putting our wish into practice. That involves other people. It's like it says, if you're practicing generosity, that involves the poor, the destitute. You are interacting with them. You've taken a vow of generosity, the 6 paramitas. So you've got to help them if you can. It's not a choice. You're a bodhisattva. If you can help them and they need help, you have to help. You are committed. That's what you've decided. This is why I was talking about spirituality. You have to become a spiritual being, not a religious being, not belonging to a Dharma center, a group, an organization, Karma Kaju, school, and all of that stuff. You can do that with little spirituality. If you're a really spiritual being, then you're the sort that is given to everybody. You have no choice. So the practice vow is a big commitment, and we have to do it, right? So the aspiration vow is like a novitiate. Now this is where it gets interesting, right? When you take the aspiration vow, so you've taken a commitment, you do your best to train your mind as a bodhisattva. And then that means you'll try and practice the 6 paramitas but you haven't signed up yet. You've not taken the promise. So you can get it wrong. And you can learn from getting it wrong. And we only take the practice commitment when we know we can do it. So when we take the aspiration commitment, that's our training. And we are committed to the 6 parameters, but we've not taken the solemn promise to all the Buddhas that I'm going to act according to the 6 parameters as best I can. So we are training in the 6 parameters. So when we learn more about becoming a bodhisattva and taking the bodhisattva vow, we need to, in fact, there isn't the bodhisattva vow unless we see it in 2 parts. There are 2 levels of bodhisattva vow. It's like if you became a nun or a monk. There's a novitiate, you take a simple set of vows, and you learn while you're in that simple set of commitments about how to act in a way as a fully ordained person, but you're not committed yet, so we're training. I hope that makes a bit of sense. So that's what this verse is about. Actual practice as a bodhisattva. Now, don't give up. If you're listening to this and thinking, I can't do this, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. Those who can, but it's too much. We are in training. So we are doing whatever we can, however much in this life we become a bit more generous, a bit more tolerant, a bit more in the practice of right conduct. Morality is about being straightforward with people, not having an agenda, not manipulating anybody. We can become a little bit better with that in this life. This is the idea of the vow. We're not saying from today onwards I'm going to be perfect. You can't. Nobody can. Huh? How could you? How could I? I know me, How could I practice the 6 parameters? Just the last one, wisdom, Buddha's wisdom. Oh, yeah, hallelujah, wish I had it. I don't. Meditation, see real meditators, what they can do, how long they can stay, how perfectly their mind is, how deep. Loving kindness. I've met some wonderful spiritual beings, Buddhist and others. And they're just such kind hearts. I feel so ashamed, being a Buddhist teacher. I think I told a story quite recently, but in my stories when I started going to Africa, and then sometimes I was taken to meet the local, spiritual person, local spirit healer or spirit man. And so, they're introduced, this is Ken, blah, 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 Buddhist teacher. And one day, one of them was talking, 3 or 4 people talking, I was talking to him, other people, and I was talking to somebody else, and then I looked, he'd gone. And I felt something strange, and he was standing behind me, back to back. I said, what you doing? He's saying, I'm testing your energy. So he wanted simply to see the reality of me, not the blah, 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 the title, the Buddhist teacher, how many hundreds and thousands of words I could give in a shrine room, what my energy body was like, how pure it was, how strong it was. He never told me the result, but we can't. We are who we are, and we just do our best to move in the right direction in a world that's moving in the wrong direction. Buddha said in his teachings about future lives that this age in which we live is an age, if you are not sucked into the downward pull, where there is more vice and more of all the harmful things, more mind poisons than nurtured, but you can stay virtuous. He says, this is like in the golden age when first 500 years of Buddhism. He says, this is like just not being pulled into the darkness is the same as all the light that was made in the first age. Everything around us would pull us into stupidity, ignorance, into more lust. You look at films, people need more horror, more corpses, more zombies, more, minds tortured, and this kind of thing. Yuck, yuck, yuck. So if when we read these teachings, we think, I can't do this, it's too high a bar, the bar is set too high, don't think that. Just doing your best to practice the paramitas is wonderful. And most of all, working on the reason you do that is because you care. You see people. You didn't see them before. You're wrapped up in yourself. Now you see people. You see the birds. What's important for them, what their life revolves around, the insects, the animals and so on. And then other human beings. You feel for them so much. You realize how incredible karma is. You see the canvases that great artists paint. Before they existed, look at Van Gogh's sunflowers, and everybody knows that, right? Before he did it, it didn't exist anywhere in the universe. And then he did it, and now there's this amazing, vivid, powerful, beautiful work of art that's given something to hundreds of thousands of people. So, when what we can do right now and then from now on is to get out of our self-obsession and just be aware of all these different beings and this amazing canvas that karma has painted. There's your next door neighbor. There's your cat, your dog, birds that fly in the sky. And then you think back, your mum, your dad. You see your brothers, your sisters, people around you, people you didn't notice before, people who serve you in shops, and then the ugly people, the not nice people, and so on. Your eyes open, your heart opens, and you feel such a debt of kindness towards them. They did so much for you in the past, and you want to help them in the future. So then you'll find the 6 paramitas come very, very much more easily. So the first line, it says, Buddhas and sentient beings are of equal importance for one's own attainment of total enlightenment. Why? Well, to become enlightened, we need to unlock 2 areas of ourselves. It's called the 2 accumulations. It's goodness and wisdom. The wisdom comes from the Buddhas. We get closer and closer to our own Buddha within. Through the teachings of the Buddhas, they give us the way to become like them. That's the whole point. They did it. They show us how we can do it. Their teachings, the Buddhas, their example, their meditation instructions, all their teachings help us follow a path, and gradually we discover Dhammadhatu in our own heart, deep within ourselves in meditation. So that brings out all the wisdom. We need the Buddhas for the wisdom, but for the accumulation of goodness, it's called virtue or punya, or sometimes translated, some people don't like it, as merit and so on. But that is very real. You won't become Buddha without punya. Punya actually has the etymology, the word means strength. Where you're helping more and more beings, it gives you power, strength, stability. So we can only do that with other sentient beings. We can only be generous by giving to them, giving them the Dharma, giving them our help. It needs other sentient beings for you to practice generosity. It needs other sentient beings for you to practice right conduct towards them. It needs those other beings, the ones who are nasty to us and who messed us up, and who, like it says here, even when you were kinder back to them and tried to forgive them, and you carried on trying to help, and they just got even worse. This happens. It says, we need them to develop forbearance. You can't develop forbearance with nice people. Friends are no good for developing forbearance. They're rubbish when it comes to that. They're too nice, you feel nice. You need someone who upsets you. Even when they're real in your life, even on the television, you need somebody who upsets you. Yeah. And then, we need other people. And we need Buddhas for the practice of meditation, 5th paramita. We need Buddhas for the practice of wisdom, 6th paramita. And we need other sentient beings for the first 4 paramitas. Okay, we'll stop there for today. I'm sorry for my ramblings and storytellings. It's just, it's what you can do when you've got your finger on the microphone. When you're giving the talk, take advantage of you. So now we do our dedication, and we think of the Chenrezik and Amitabha. They're really there. They're really there. They're really here. Not there, they're really here. And then we do the dedication. I prostrate to the Dhammakaya, the union of all the Buddhas of the 3 times, and to the one who gazes upon the 6 kinds of beings, Chenrezik, 11-faced and all-pervading like space, and to awesomely impressive and majestic Amitabha. Om Mani Padme Huri, Om Mani Padme Huri, Om Mani Padme Huri. Through the quintessence of all the Dharma in 6 syllables, may a cloud of offerings appear. May they be presented to the peerless guide, Chenrezik, and to Shakyamuni, King of sages, crowning glory of all the Shakyas, and to an ocean of Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and arhants in the 10 directions, and to all our Kagyu Lamas. Om Mani Padme Huri. May the fulfillment of the wishes of the former Buddhas and the completion of the accumulation of the future Buddhas and the long life prayers of the present Buddhas, all be made manifest through the 6 syllables, Om Mani Padme Hum. All those who have a karmic link with me, my father, my mother, my teachers, relatives and friends, all those who place their hopes in me and rely on me, Protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All those who've been my benefactors and asked me not to forget them, all the kind benefactors I promised not to forget, Protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All the dead for whom lamas have been asked to say prayers, all those who passed away from this life, of whose possessions I received a share, Protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way. Grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All the artisans who make Dharma goods, such as representations of the body, speech and mind of all the Buddhas, and those whose livelihood involves the belongings of lamas or the Sangha, or ransom obtained through selling sacred images, or from goods folk offer out of faith. Protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. The dead I've heard about or seen with my own eyes, and all those in the 3 dimensions of conditioned existence who passed away, Protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All those who've been murdered, who died from starvation, who perished on high mountain passes or were drowned, or those who wander in the bardo, accompanied by much sin and no virtue, Protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way. Grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. The most kind mother cow whose milk and yogurt I consume, all the animals mass farmed or otherwise cruelly exploited by humans, all the animals whose flesh and blood I've eaten, the bees and insects on whose labor human life depends, Protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All the pack animals overburdened with loads they can hardly bear, those beasts who are beaten while ridden, those who would not budge and had noses pierced for pulling with a rope, plough animals, all the beasts I've exploited in past lives, wherever they are now reborn, Protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Those who've committed the 10 unvirtuous actions and the 5 immeasurable sins of no reprieve, or the 5 sins almost as great, all those with such bad karma, Protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. Those in the hells, craving spirits, animals, jealous semi-gods, gods and men, all sentient beings in the 3 dimensions of conditioned existence, Protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All those who live in the four elements of earth, water, fire, and wind, whether in bodily form or formless, small or large, protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way. Grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hori. Rulers, monsters, and citizens steeped in corruption, bad humans who are shameless, deceitful, and hypocritical, those with ill will in their hearts, protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way, and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hori. Infinite as all the cosmic systems in the 10 directions, all beings as difficult to reckon as the unfathomed deeps, protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way. Grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hori. Beings who live in each province of this world, or anywhere on similar planets under their suns, protector Chenrezik, lead them on the way. Grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hori. 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 Thank you very much. And now it's your turn, your input or questions.
Ken?
Yeah, Linda.
Hi. Marilyn.
Oh, that was Marion. Sorry.
Marilyn, yes.
Yeah.
What do we do when we make mistakes? Which I do all the time. I feel it, so I think that's probably a good start.
Yeah.
And I know I've done wrong.
Yeah.
And I regret it, and it's complicated, and I feel shame and guilt and all of that.
Mm.
Is there anything else I can do to
Uh,
stop accumulating it?
to stop accumulating it, that's, well. Okay, here we go. Here we go. There are 4 methods in all schools of Buddhism, in the common teachings of the Buddha, for purifying the karma we've made through doing wrong, harm, right? You can't go back and undo. It's done. Whatever we've done is done. But we can repair the karmic effects in us. And so there are what are called the 4 powers of purification. And the word is really power. They have the power to do it. In Vajrayana teachings, these all 4 are combined in the purification practice of Vajrasattva, Dorje Sempa, which is something that many of us do intensely because we carry so much of that kind of karma. And so sometimes we do 100,000 Vajrasattva practices or something like that. So the 4 powers, the first one is the power of remorse. You could call it regret. This is about honesty, and it means we really regret what we've done. So this one is looking back at what we've done and knowing it was bad and no messing about. And the sort of the litmus test for that, because you did it because there were reasons. Somebody with no idea, whatever the reasons. You did it, right? You hurt somebody. So when we look back, you forget all the excuses, all the things that you might plead to in court if you were taken to court and say, yes, but, and my lawyer says there are mitigating circumstances, all of that kind of stuff. Forget that. You hurt somebody, that was wrong. Fully, clearly, honestly. So the litmus test is, if the same thing happened again, would you do the same thing? So if you ask that to somebody, sometimes they need to think about it. That's no good. That's no good. It has to be never. No, that's the litmus test. So sincere regret. I mean, you feel that. It's organic. You feel it in your heart. And it's a very, very, very good practice, amongst other things, because before we die, sometimes all those things run like a movie in front of us, and you feel just so bad because you did those things. So the regret now deals with that now, rather than it being a horrible end-of-life experience. So there's a lot of value in that, and it needs to be 100%. So in the scriptures, the Buddha tells the story of, or there's the story of one person in the Buddha's lifetime, and what they did, terrible karma, and how they purified simply through the power of regret, and attained the levels of the path, stream entrant, arhat, whatever. It leads on to the second power, which is the power of promise, it's called, or determination. I will never do that again. We've had a lot of that in society, people with holding up placards, never again. We never want this to happen again. And it's a redefinition of oneself. I will never do that again. I never want to be the person who has it in them to do that again. And that's the power of deep promise, not just one promise. We can make it again and again. I'm an angry person. I never want to blow up at somebody else ever again. Or, I'm a lustful person. I made somebody suffer through my desire, whatever. And through that honesty that's in the first power and the second power, we have that promise for the future. The third power is called the power of support, and this is the power of refuge and bodhicitta to, how can you say, blanket clean all of our harmful past karma. It's like, I always say the same example. There was a bleach when I was young. He said, kills all known germs, right? You spray it on your toilet, and no matter what germs are there, they're dead, right? So if we really mean our refuge, and we feel connected and protected by all the refuges, if we really mean our bodhicitta, that loving care for all beings, that in itself, also, that by itself alone has the power. So again, in the Buddha's teachings, he talked about somebody who did that, who had terrible karma, but it was purified through what's called the power of support of the refuges, and particularly of our own refuge-taking and bodhicitta. The fourth power is called the power of specific remedies, and so there, if you have a particularly potent karma that's messing up your life and messing up your practice, sometimes we can go to a wise person, to a lama who has enough insight, and tell them, I have this obstacle. Maybe we don't know the cause. Maybe we've got a life obstacle or a practice obstacle. And we can go to a lama and they see it through what we've done in a past life. And they give you a very specific practice to do. They say, if you do this, or sometimes it's liberating animals, or sometimes it's so many of this mantra, or whatever. And that's very specific. It's like, I had an infection this last week. I was quite unwell. And you get, an antibiogram. That's French. You get a blood test, right? And it says, this is the bug you've got. These are the antibiotics that work. And so you take that antibiotic and it works. So specific remedies, very specially tailored. So any of those 4 powers alone has the... So if we can combine all of them, then that's the official way.
Ideal.
If it's more internal and you've broken your bodhisattva vow, then we don't have time to do that today. But in the bodhisattva teachings, it gives you very precise guidance about if you've done this, then you need to retake the vow, but you can do it yourself in front of your own shrine. But if you've done this kind of a breakage, you actually do need to go back to a teacher and take the vow again, and so on. It's very clear.
Thank you, Ken.
You're very
Brilliant.
welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm dealing with insects this summer, and I can pick up a spider and take it outside. That's not a problem. But if there are too many mosquitoes and I get bitten, I can really get sick, or with an ant infestation. And I really don't like killing any beings. I'm sure you've gotten asked this question before, but what can be done?
This is one of the most difficult questions, Susanna. This is the one that no Lama wants to hear, let alone me, because there is an answer, but it's not always practicable. You can't always put it into practice. So how can you say the cop-out realistic answer is usually to do your best, not to harm and not to kill. And like with mosquitoes and mosquito nets, there's stuff you can put on your body which helps them not to be attracted to you, be attracted to somebody else. And so anyway, we do our best. That the problem isn't there in the first place, but people have this, with themselves, with their house, with their pets as well. What do you do with insects on pets and that kind of thing? And then in Samiling we had the problem with rodents. We had rats and mice, and we had council inspectors who would come round and they said, we'll close the place down if you don't get rid of them. And so, you've got this, there's no perfect solution. Close the place down, okay, but then there's such a loss of benefit to so many people. And it's okay for the mice and the rats, but then you lose the benefit. So we couldn't do that. We didn't want to kill them ourselves. And in fact, to satisfy the council, we had to bring in a professional service. And people got so upset. They saw the rent to kill. It's called rent to kill. Terrible name, rent to kill. And they'd see the van pull up, and the man go around. The man, he'd been doing it so long, he looked like a mouse. It was very funny, because and he taught me to see. He said, you need to think like a rat or a mouse. And I'd go around the property with him, and he'd say, look there, and he'd show me a place where they can get in. And they say, you need to block that up. And that was weird. But anyway, people will get so upset when they saw the van. And they say, how can you in a Buddhist center? How can you? But that was an impossible choice. What could Akon Rinpoche do? He felt really, really bad. So we did, we included them in the prayers, the ones that are killed. It's not. But ideally, you'd let the mosquitoes have a bit of blood. The thing is, they need to get it from you. I mean, if you could just prick your finger and leave them a little bit of blood every night in a dish, but then they can't understand that. You can't say, here, help yourself. They need to actually get it live from you. So we really do our best. And the Dalai Lama's got some interesting things to say on that. Right? I can't validate what he says as a Buddhist teacher. But if you check it out somewhere, I don't know, if you do a search, Dalai Lama mosquitoes, he often uses it as an example. And he says, well, I won't tell you what he said, I don't want to say it. You check it out, but it's sort of quite practical. But I remember I was in a shrine room in Harare in Africa, mosquito time, and I was with Sering Tashi, Akon Rinpoche's nephew, and I was covered, but it was very hot weather. He just had this monk's waistcoat. All of his arms and shoulders were exposed. And I was sitting next to him, and these huge mosquitoes were landing on him. And he was sort of looking like this and looking at me. and so that was a real sort of exercise in one-pointed, lots of the 6 parameters: generosity, forbearance, meditation, one-pointed, and but he had that lovely smile on his face, like, this is it. You can't escape this. Everyone's looking at me. What do I do? I'm a Buddhist monk, so come on, bring it on. Have a feast.
Wow. And thank you. Thanks for such a real answer.
Yeah.
Ken, maybe Susanna too. I don't know if it's helpful, but I've had problems here with both wasps nesting in the roof and also rats nesting outside for a bit. And the first year with the wasps, I had to just spray them all because they were causing such a problem for the neighbors too, and they filled the house up basically with dying wasps. So after that, what I've done each year is to try and minimize the casualties. Is in the spring before they actually form nests, actually spray underneath the roof tiles so that it puts them off, and that seems to have worked for the last 3 or 4 years. So I don't have to end up having to spray a nest, which is quite a hazardous operation. And with the rats, I was able to deprive them of food and also trap the mother and take her to some woodland, and that seemed to shift the rest of the family as well. Although my neighbor was putting out poison as well, so I don't know which got them. But yeah, it was just that I had to be practical, but also try to minimize the amount of killing that I had to do. So that, I don't know if that's useful at all, but that was the way I've approached it so far.
Last year, I relocated over 100 rodents, I think.
Ken, even that is complicated because I was house sitting in lockdown, and there was a terrible, in the beginning of lockdown, and there was a terrible rat infestation, and I diligently got a humane trap and relocated them. And then I was told afterwards that they get eaten by predators pretty much immediately after you've moved them anyway, because they're they're vulnerable, they don't know their safe spots, and also that other rats are territorial and things like that. So it's also I realize I've held myself a nice sweet little myth that relocating is a kind option, and sometimes it's things like tossing snails over the wall onto a soft bed of grass on the other side, and then hearing a lawnmower go over them 2 days later or something.
But that's their karma. That's their karma. I mean, there you can't do anything. We can only control what's in our own sphere of influence, can't we? I mean, and so many things can happen to them. That's their karma. And out there in nature, red in tooth and claw, they're all eating each other basically, and they get predated. But we can only control what we do. And like I said, we do our best. What else could you have done other than spend your life setting up a rat and mouse paradise where you've got them fed, and they did that in one 3-year retreat in the USA. They had a rodent infection in the winter, and the Lama said, don't relocate them outside because they might not survive. And so they got delivered, because they're in retreat, from the pet shop, luxury hamster cages, and they had them in the retreat all through the winter, and they waited till the spring and everything was okay, and then they released them.
Wow. Thank you, and thank you for your clarification about that being their karma. I often deliberate about that. If I've been growing vegetables and there's slugs and snails on them, and then I think, but if I'm putting them in a bad place, how does that impact my karma for removing them from a place where they're really comfortable and putting them in a place where they're not so comfortable?
Well, you didn't think you were putting them in a bad place, did you?
I knew it was not as nice as the vegetable patch.
Yeah, but you weren't saying, I'm putting you in a place where the lawnmower is going to get you in 2 days' time. You weren't thinking that. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, well, what day of the month are we? Yeah, see you next week. We carry on these teachings, and have a good week. Be well.
Oh, very much, Ken. I hope you have a good week.
Again,
Thank you.
hope you feel better.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ken.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Sure,
Thank you.
everyone.
Wishing you well.
Bye-bye. Thank you very